Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Chad with Health Chiropractic. It's a great day to talk about your ultimate health. Today I'm coming up and I'm talking about the 3 checkmark game. This is a game I've kind of created to help people when they're coming back from an injury to kind of self-assess how they're doing returning to that activity from either after an injury, or when they're coming back and they're just increasing their activity. So the 3 checkmark game we'll play for today. We'll just use this picture back here. We'll use the example of maybe an ankle sprain or a low back strain, something like that. The first part of the checkmark game is during the activity. So assuming that you've gotten better and you're starting to feel better, this is the part in that care where you're starting to increase your activity and trying to get back into your activity. So starting slow, starting controlled, working with somebody, a healthcare professional, or maybe you're working with me. We've probably played this game before, but it's just trying to check and see how you're doing with that activity and how that injury or that thing that you're recovering from is doing as you increase the activity. So in the case of the ankle sprain or the low back strain, this first check mark is how does that area feel during the activity? Does the area get more sore with the activity? That's probably a sign it's not ready yet, or you're doing too much too fast. So if you're getting worse with that activity in the first part, probably need to stop and then reassess kind of what you're doing and maybe start at a lighter activity. So if you can do that activity and you can go the whole way through and you feel pretty good, you can check that first part of that box of the 3 check mark game. So the second part of the checkmark game is how does that area feel a couple hours later? Now if your ankle kind of wants to swell up or your back's feeling a little more sore a couple hours later, you go back to that first part and maybe don't go quite as intense and have to play that game all over again, or maybe you need another day or 2 off, or maybe you're not ready yet for that activity. But the goal is to feel good in that first part and then be able to feel good a couple hours later. So this is kind of looking at different delayed versions of inflammation or irritations to those systems. And then you can kind of self-assess and see how you're doing. So the third check mark is how does it feel the next day? So let's say you do that activity, your ankle feels great, your back feels great, you spend a couple hours later and you're still doing okay, maybe proper cool down or proper stretching, things like that. And then the next day you wake up and you're sore. That's still probably the sign that maybe that first activity was a little too much. Especially if we're relating it to that back or to that ankle. So there's a difference between doing an activity, feeling muscles that you maybe haven't used in a little while. That's a different kind of soreness. I'm talking specific to the irritation or the injury that you're having. So, but if you can get to the next day and still be feeling pretty good, that's a sign that what you've done in those first 2 parts or what you did for your activity is probably the appropriate amount. So if you can do that activity, you can feel pretty good the next couple hours later, and you can feel good the next day. That's a good sign you're on the right track. That's a great sign that you can maybe continue at that level and then keep playing that game as you progress into that activity or increase the intensity of the activity. Again, this is a great thing to work with somebody if you're not sure how to do it. A healthcare professional that is certainly able to train in this, but I like to give simple practical tips, and that's a simple practical game that I've come up with to help patients when they're returning from an injury. And you can play the same thing if you're increasing your activity levels, even if you've been feeling good too. So that's the 3 checkmark game. I hope you like it. If you have questions about it at all, feel free to post below. But again, great day to talk about your ultimate health. Let's keep you feeling good.